Hi, I watched another new film recently for the first time, and it's not a new film actually. It's from 1973, and it's Sidney Lumet's The Offence. It was one of Sean Connery's first films after he had finally played James Bond for the last time in Diamonds Are Forever, and it's directed by the quintessential New York filmmaker Lumet in what could not be a more appropriate setting for a director of his pedigree and a star of Connery's magnitude. That's right, it was filmed in Bracknell in Berkshire. It's the story of a police detective, Detective Sergeant Johnson, who is involved in a major operation in catching a man who has been kidnapping, raping, and murdering young schoolgirls. Despite their attempts at catching the man and surrounding a nearby school at home time, he manages to grab someone, and when the woods nearby are searched, they finally find the girl alive, injured, but certainly potentially recovering. Johnson's behaviour on finding her is odd, and her screams alert other people. With a lack of evidence to go on, the police start simply leading on anyone they know who might be involved, and eventually some uniformed officers pick up a man who's acting oddly. He's taken back to the station, and Johnson manages to send the others away for an interview with the man. Half an hour later, the film has jumped forward, the man is dead on the floor, with Johnson standing over his body. This is where the film actually starts, effectively. That opening sequence of people realizing something is wrong and then rushing into the room plays out in slow motion under the opening credits. The film then resolves into three duologues, adapted from the play John Hopkins' Something Like the Truth, Hopkins having written the script. First, Johnson is sent home and he speaks with his wife. He's a brutal, unpleasant man, but he describes the horrors that he's seen as a police officer, the mutilation, murder, rape, the depravity that he's seen in his 20 years on the job and how it's corrupted him from the inside. He's taken back to the police station, interviewed by a superior played by Trevor Howard, who, over the course of a single day, tries to understand why what happened. Finally, as Johnson's being taken down to the cells, we flashback and see in full what actually happened between him and the man. And we understand exactly why Johnson is the way he is, why he behaves the way he does, and what motivated him to kill the suspect. The problem with the film is it's very theatrical. It's based on the play, as I said, but it is so wedded to its theatricality. The stilted, stiff delivery of the dialogue. There's no crosstalk. There's no overlapping dialogue in the Robert Altman style, which would feel more natural. Here, everyone always waits for the other person to finish speaking in a way that feels very false and unnatural. Um, Setting it in somewhere like Bracknell, a new town with modern, brutalist buildings and housing estates, feels like a really odd fit for Sidney Lumet, with whom Connery had worked on The Hill in 1965 alongside Ian Bannon, who plays the suspect. So, although he was working with people he knew and trusted, they nevertheless weren't quite the right fit for the production. That said, Connery is superb. This is probably the best performance of his I've ever seen. Johnson is a deeply troubled, deeply problematic figure. He's a murderer right at the start of the film, having beaten a man to death. But the layers peel back and we start to understand why he is like this, the horrors he's seen, and he begs at one point for help in trying to quell the pictures he sees in his head. It's a titanic performance and it's well worth seeing just for Connery. That said, the film desperately needs tightening up. It could really do with a remake. The basic story is very strong. The uh, nature of the plot structure is coherent and makes sense. But it's odd that the opening section of the film, before the death takes place, feels much more cinematic, and then it lapses into far more theatrical staging and writing once we get into the material from the play. It's not as good as it could have been, but thanks to Connery's performance, it's definitely worth seeing.